In today's video, I'm going to attempt to replicate this YouTube sidebar, and while it may look really simple, there's actually a lot of really cool animation and CSS tricks going on that I think would be a great challenge to try to create ourselves. This is also going to be my first time trying to solve this problem, so you're going to be able to see my thought process, how I go about debugging different issues. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name is Kyle, and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. And for this project, I actually have gone ahead and started by just adding all the information that we need to get started. So like this icons HTML file, all I've done in here is I've taken all the SVG icons that are in this sidebar here. I've just copied them out into our HTML file so you don't have to watch me do that. And then same thing in our style CSS. I've taken all the colors we're going to need. For example, we have these gray colors. I have all the different gray colors as well as this red accent color. Again, just so we don't have to go through and copy all these values out manually. And then lastly, I pulled out the logo file that's being used in this corner right here, this top section of the nav bar. And the way I got these is I just right clicked on all these things. I clicked on inspect. And then all I did is I just went in and I went to the computed tab and I would search for, like, for example, color, or I would search for fill, and that would give me the information I needed. For example, I could get like the color and be like, okay, here's the red color that we're using as the accent color, for example. So that's how I got all those different values. And for getting these SVGs, again, I just inspected and I went in the elements section. I just found the SVG, which is just right here, and I just copied it and pasted it into my page, just coming down to the bottom here. And I would just paste it in. That's what I did for this. So nothing really crazy. It's just time consuming, so I didn't want to make you have to sit through and watch that. Now to get started with creating this sidebar, the very first thing we're going to need to do is to create an index HTML. So we'll say index.html. And inside of this index HTML, I just want to create our boilerplate code. So we're going to have this like header section up here. We're going to have our sidebar on the left, and we're going to have our actual content on the page itself. So let's do that. We're going to have our header, which is going to go at the very top. And we might as well put that inside of a header. So we'll say header.header just for consistency. Then we're going to have a container. And this container, if I spell it correctly here, this container is going to have two sections. The first section we're going to have is going to be our sidebar, which we might as well put in a side. So we'll say sidebar. And then we're also going to have another section, which is like our main content. So we'll put it in a main and we'll just call it content. Doesn't really matter. There we go. So now we have our container that wraps all of our content, our header at the very top, as well as our sidebar section. And in our content, I'm just going to say like lorem 1000 or something. So we have just a ton of text. That way, what we can do is we can actually see what this looks like when we have to do with things like scrolling and so on. So we have our content here, and the next thing is going to be our sidebar. And if we just save this and open this file with live server, we can see what we're working with. And there we go. We now just have essentially a giant wall of text, which is perfect, so we can test all of our different scrolling needs. And the next thing we need to work on is going to be our header as well as our sidebar. In the header, the only thing I'm going to put is the icon here for expanding and collapsing our menu. So we're just going to copy that SVG over because it is an SVG. Scroll to the bottom here. You can see, actually, I think I put it at the very top. You can see we have our menu icon. I'm just going to copy this out and we're going to put that inside of our header, just like that. So we have our menu icon, and I'm going to give it a class here. We don't need these classes that it comes with. Instead, I'm just going to give it a class, which is like menu icon. So we can select that in our CSS, and we can just come in here and we can say menu icon for now. So now if we look at what we have over here, we scroll back to the top, we see we have the giant menu icon. Obviously not quite what we want, but it's at least there. Next thing we're going to do is our sidebar. So for our sidebar, let's just come into our index.html. We've already given it a class of sidebar. I'm just going to put some text inside of here for now, just so we can see it off to the side. So right now we have our sidebar right here. And then this next section is going to be our main content. And then up here, obviously, is our header. So with that, we can kind of get started with our CSS, because generally what I like to do is I like to write out the minimal amount of HTML and such that I can, get my CSS for my main layout, and then I start to work on the rest of my HTML and CSS. So what we can do is, very first thing I like to do is just come up here for our body. I want to set the margin here to 0, just so we have no spacing on the sides. So we'll say margin 0, just like that. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to take in everything. So we'll say everything, and we're also going to get our before and after elements, just like this. I want to set our box sizing to border box. Again, that just makes sizing things a little bit easier. And now we can actually work on our menu icon. So our menu icon, we want to make it pretty small. Let's say that we're going to do a width of like 25 pixels. We'll see how that looks, and we'll do a height as well at the same value. Let's come over here, and if we refresh, of course, that's not doing anything. Let's see what we're doing wrong here. Go into our index.html. We have that menu icon class being applied. Of course, obviously, we should link our style sheet. So link our style sheet here. There we go. That should hopefully fix some certain things. Now our menu icon, it has some styles already on it by default. I'm going to remove these because we don't want those default styles. Same thing with this class here. We don't need this, so I'm going to get rid of that. And this class down here, we don't need this either, so I'm going to get rid of that. There we go. Those are just from YouTube itself. So now our icon is much smaller, kind of like we wanted. It's pretty similarly sized. It's close enough in my opinion. It doesn't have to be pixel perfect, but if you wanted it to be, you could inspect this. And then what you could do is you could kind of hover over the element on the side. You can see this is actually technically 24 by 24 pixels, it looks like. So if we wanted it to be exact, we could change this to 24 and 24, but it doesn't matter. We'll just do 25. Next, we're going to have to change the color. So we're going to come in here with our fill. And our fill is how you change the color of an SVG. And in our case, we're going to go with, I think it is the medium gray color. So we'll say medium gray. And if we look at that, you can see it gives us the same gray color that we have here. And when we hover, you can see it gets darker. So let's take our menu icon on hover. And I want to change our fill to be that dark gray. So we'll just say dark gray. And now if we hover that icon, you can see it gives us the dark gray color, which is perfect. Next, we just want to give it a pointer icon. So we'll say cursor pointer. And also to make this accessible, I'm going to put this inside of a button. So we're just going to say button, and that's going to have our SVG inside of it like that. And we'll just give this a class of menu icon button. So we can style that because obviously we don't want all the extra stuff. We'll say menu icon button. And we'll just say that the background is going to be none, border, none, padding, 0. That should hopefully fix it. There we go. That got rid of pretty much everything. Now the next thing to work on is styling out our header itself. So we'll just come in here. We'll say our header. It's going to have a position of sticky. So it's going to stick to the top of the page. And we'll give it a top of 0. So hopefully, yep, as you can see, that's sticking to the very top of our page, which is exactly what we want. Also, we're going to give it a background color of white. So now if we scroll, you can see that our header, has that background color, which is obscuring everything behind it, which is perfect. We can also give it a box shadow. Now, I'm not really an expert on good looking box shadows, so we'll just kind of try our best here. We'll say 0 is going to be the Y or the X offset. We're going to do 3 pixels for the Y offset, so it'll be downwards a little bit, which is what we want. And for these values, we'll just say like 2 pixels and 2 pixels. And we'll choose a black color. So we'll say 0, 0, 0, and we'll do like 0.5. Okay, that is a quite dark. We'll try 0.2 instead. There we go, that's a little bit more faded. And I think I'm going to change this so it's 0 for the spread. There we go. So now it's a little bit more of just a blur instead. And maybe we'll make that 1 pixel. Let's see. If we inspect this, a really easy way to kind of play around with these is we can just play around with the computed or the styles down here. We can click on this button and we can really kind of play around with what we want our thing to look like. So we can increase the blur. And I think actually having a bigger blur of like 5 looks a little bit better. And we'll change the Y offset to like 1. There we go. And maybe we'll make our blur even more. We'll make it like 10. Now we'll do 5, but we'll just make the color a little bit darker. We'll do like 40%. Sure, that looks good enough. So we know that this is going to be a value of 1, 10, and then 40%. And if we just make sure we refresh, that looks pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a pretty good box shadow. Theirs is, maybe slightly different, but you can tweak it however you see fit. So that's our header section, completely done. We can add a little padding around our button if we want, or just around our header. So we'll say our padding here is going to be like 0.5 rem. That just gives it a little bit of space. Maybe we'll do 0.25 rem. And we'll do 0.5 rem here for the left and right direction. That looks pretty good, pretty similar to what we have here, obviously without all this extra content. So now we have our button, but it doesn't do anything right now. To make it do something, we're going to need JavaScript for that. So we'll just create a script.js file. And inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to want to select this button here. So we can just give it a data menu icon button data attribute. And the reason I do this is to separate my CSS classes from my JavaScript. That way, if I want to change my CSS classes, it won't break any of my JavaScript code. Okay, so with that done, we can just say we want to get our menu icon button, get document.query selector, and we want to get that data attribute, which I just copied over. And we can say that when we click on this, we want to do something, which in our case is going to be open sidebar / close sidebar. Okay, there we go. We're going to implement the rest of this in just a little bit when we actually get our sidebar working. One other thing is I want to add a little bit of margin on the bottom of our header. So we'll say like margin bottom is 1 rem, just to space out our content. I think that looks a little bit better like that. Now we can work on our actual sidebar and our container itself. Now you'll notice when we click on this sidebar, when we're in like a mobile view, it kind of overlays our screen. While if I zoom this out really far, you'll see it pushes all the content to the side when you're on a desktop view. Technically, this site is really meant specifically for desktop and not really mobile views. So I'm going to really only focus on the pushing the content to the side. But you could also, do the overlay version as well, where it's got this overlay like this. Either one works, and you can even do both if you want. But in this video, I'm going to focus mostly on the pushing content off to the side, as I feel like that's the more common use case for a sidebar. So what we need to do is select our sidebar, which we gave the class of sidebar. There we go. Now we have our sidebar, and what I want to do is I essentially want to give it some width value. So we're going to have like an active sidebar and a inactive sidebar. So we're going to give it a class like sidebar.open, for example. When it's open, it's going to have a large width, while when it's closed, it's going to have a small width that's going to just take up these icons essentially. So by default, when it's closed, let's say that our width is going to be 50 pixels maybe. We're just kind of messing around with that. We'll see if that's about what we want. So now you can see this is a much smaller container. If we give it a border, we'll just say border 1 pixel solid black. You can see that this black section is about 50 pixels wide, and it's, give or take about the same size as this. Maybe it needs to be 75. We don't really know. We're going to play around with it as we start adding our content, but that is our sidebar right now. And actually, I don't really want to have my margin on my header, because as you can see, it pushes my sidebar down, which actually, no, I think that should be mostly fine, because we can put a negative margin on our sidebar. So for example, our sidebar can have a margin top of -1 rem, and now it's going to meet up with our top content here, which I think is fine. And then we can just put a padding on the top of 1 rem. And there we go. It pushes our content down, but it allows our border to go up to the top, which is useful because you can see there's a border on the side of this. So we can change our border to be a border on the right. Instead of black, we're going to make this a light gray, I believe is what we want this to be. There we go. That looks pretty good. And that's about the same color. Maybe we'll try our lightest gray. No, that's way too light. So we'll just do light gray, and that's going to be our border color that's going all the way along our sidebar. That looks really good. Now, one important thing about our sidebar is it's broken into 3 sections. If we expand this, you can see we have our top section here, which has got like the icon, channel, name, and so on. We have this middle section, which scrolls, and we have this bottom section for our settings and feedback. And if we zoom out, you'll notice that there's actually a gap between this bottom section and this middle section. So the bottom section is always at the bottom, this top section is always at the top, and the middle is always in the middle and filling as much space as it possibly can. And if it doesn't have enough room, it is going to scroll like this. So that's the next thing I want to implement. I want to take our sidebar and break it into 3 distinct sections. So we can get rid of the content in our sidebar. We don't really need that for now. What we're going to do is we're just going to have a top sidebar. We're going to have a middle sidebar, and we're going to have a bottom sidebar. You can call these whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you can give them better names, but for our case, this is going to work fine. So in the top sidebar, let's kind of expand this. What we're going to do is we're going to have an icon up the top here. We're going to have essentially a text and then another piece of text. So pretty straightforward. First, we're going to have an anchor tag, and this anchor tag is going to have an href. Oops, we'll just say anchor tag. Href is just going to be a pound symbol, so it's going to go nowhere for now. And this is going to have an image inside of it. So we'll just say image, and the source of this image is going to be this logo here. So we can say /logo.jpg, and we'll just give this an alt of channel logo. There we go. So that's going to put the actual image on our page, and this is actually a link. So when we click it, it's going to just redirect us to that pound symbol, which is perfectly fine. That's what we want. Now, the next thing we're going to have is our middle section. Our middle section is going to have a bunch of icons. So for now, I'm just going to put some text. We'll just say middle. And then in the bottom, I'm just going to put the text bottom, just so we can see what this looks like with all the content, because the next step is going to be adding the icons, which is a lot of work in my opinion. Also, in this top section, we still need to add our 2 pieces of text. So we're just going to add in text, and we're going to put them inside of divs. And we're just going to say, for example, your channel, I believe is what that one said. And the other one said the channel name, which is web dev simplified. There we go. Let's make sure that's correct. Your channel and web dev simplified. And this is just lowercase. There we go. Now we have all of our different sections in the top. Our middle is done, and our bottom is done. Next step is going to be actually styling all this content. So in our styles, our sidebar, we want to display this as flex. And that's going to make it really easy for us to lay out our content to have this scroll bar like this. So we can say display flex, and flex direction is going to be column. This is going to do is going to stack everything vertically inside this section. If we get rid of this width for now, you can see it's going to be full width now. You can see everything is stacked top to bottom. Now we can select that middle sidebar. I think that's what I called it. Let's double check. Yep, middle sidebar. I want to set the flex grow on this to 1. What's going to happen is it's going to make this fill as much of the height as possible. So we need to set our sidebar to have a height essentially of 100% of our screen size, since we want it to fill the entirety of our left side of our screen. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to take our sidebar. We're going to set the height here to 100 VH, but this is actually going to run us into some problems. As you can see, it is now the full height, but the sidebar or the nav bar section at the top, our header here, is unfortunately also taking up some level of our height. And that is going to present us some problems because now our sidebar is slightly too big. You can see this bottom section is actually off the screen. So we need to offset this by the height of our nav bar, or our header, I'm sorry. So in our header, instead of actually hard coding some padding values here, what I want to do is I want to hard code a height. So we'll say that our height here is going to be, let's say like 30 pixels. That's a little bit too small. We'll say 40 pixels. There we go. And then what I want to do is I want to say some padding is going to be 0 on the top and bottom, and we're going to have 0.5 RAM on the left and right. And then I can just change this to display of flex, and I can align our items in the center, and that should hopefully center our icon just like that. And there we go. Now what happened is now our header has a set height, which is 40 pixels. We're going to put that up here. We'll say header height, just like that. Make sure that's there. And we'll say this is 40 pixels. And then what I want to do is just use that value here, header height. And then down here inside of our sidebar, we can take our height and we can calculate 100 VH minus our header height. And now when we save, you can see that this bottom section down here is all the way at the bottom of our page. And that means that our header is now taking up exactly the height of our page, which means it's never going to overflow our page, which is great. That's exactly what we want. So this middle section is going to grow as big as it can to fill the page, and everything else is going to be squeezed in between it. Same thing with this middle section here. One other thing we want to do is we want to set the overflow in the Y direction to auto. That's just going to make it so that this section will scroll if there's too much content in it. So if I come in here and instead of just a little bit of text, I put a bunch of text and I save, you can now see if we make our width a little bit thinner, we'll say width back to 75 pixels. Now this middle section scrolls while the other sections stay exactly the same. And we could even get rid of this overflow Y and it's still going to, actually it won't scroll, sorry. So yeah, overflow Y is going to make it scroll. And we don't want to scroll in the X direction, so we're going to say overflow X is just going to be hidden. There we go. And we're just going to make it hidden for our entire sidebar. And we're going to also make sure it's hidden here as well. So our entire sidebar, anything that overflows is going to be hidden. And also in this middle sidebar section, everything that overflows is going to be hidden. We'll just say overflow hidden for the sidebar. There we go. So now this middle section scrolls if it's too big and everything else stays exactly static. That looks really good. Now let's take a look at our sidebar and actually start trying to style out some of the different content inside of it, because our content section, this other section here, is really going to be fine. All we need to do is just put it in the correct place, and that'll actually be really easy to do. We can select our container, which wraps everything, and set the display here to flex. So now what's going to happen is it's going to put our different pieces of content side by side. We look inside of here, we have our sidebar, and we have our content here. And our container is a display of flex, so those should be side by side with each other. All we want to do is we want to make sure our sidebar does not shrink. So on our sidebar, we'll say flex shrink is 0. That means it's never going to get any smaller at all. It's always going to be whatever static size we give it. And this other content is just going to show up on the right side of the page. All we need to do is give it some space from our sidebar. We're going to say our content, I think that's what I gave it as a class. It's going to have a margin on the right. And we'll just say like 1 rem. I'm sorry, margin on the left of 1 rem. And actually we can just put the margin on all sides. So we'll say on the left and right side, it should have a margin of 1 rem. There we go. So now there's space on the left and the right of our content, which looks really good. And we'll even put margin on the bottom. So we'll say margin bottom is 1 rem as well. There we go. So we have space on the bottom of the page, as well as space all around the entire object, which looks really good. And actually what we could do is we could just put the margin on here to 1 rem. Then what I could do is I could take my sidebar, remove this padding and margin. So it's going to have that gap here. And then what we can do is come all the way up to our header and get rid of the margin we put on the bottom. So now the margin for everything inside of here is just going to be built in. So our sidebar, what we can do is we can just say that we want some padding on it of 1 rem so that we have some space from the top section. And then all the rest of our content is just having its margin built in. So our header doesn't have any extra margin. I think that looks really good. Now the next step is going to be to style the things in our sidebar, which we've been trying to do for a little while. So let's look at that. We're going to have our icon here, which grows and shrinks. So what I first want to do is I want to do just the sidebar when it's open, and then we're going to do the sidebar when it's closed next, or maybe we'll do the closed one first. It doesn't really matter. So let's work on this icon here. So when the sidebar is closed, which just has the default sidebar class, what we want to do is come over to here. We want to make this icon way smaller. So let's give it a class. If we open up our sidebar, we want the top sidebar, and we're going to have class on our anchor tag. And this is just going to be channel logo. There we go. So what we can do is we can select the sidebar. And what I want to do is I want to get the channel logo inside the sidebar. I want to set the width to maybe 25 pixels. I want to set the height to 25 pixels. And then what I want to do is I want to select our sidebar. I want to get the channel logo, and I want to get the image directly inside that. And I want to set the width to 100% and the height to 100%. And that, of course, did not do quite what I expected it to do. Let me just inspect this to see exactly where our sizing is going on here. So we have our channel log. Oh, there's our problem immediately. This should say channel logo. And there we go. That fixed some of our problems. So we set the width and height to 25 pixels. We comment this out. Of course, that's not working. So let's inspect this and see what's going on here. So we have our channel logo, which has a size that looks really weird. Oh, of course, A tags can't put a width and height on them. So we're going to say display of block. That should hopefully allow us to width and height them. And there we go. Now we can make this the correct size. So 25 pixels, I mean, it looks kind of a little bit on the small side. Actually, it looks pretty good. I'd say maybe 30 pixels is the actual size. So we'll try 30. And then all we need to do is just center this inside of our sidebar. So to do that, I think probably the best thing to do is just make our actual sidebar itself have everything centered. So what we can do is we can say we want to align our items in the center, and that should center all of our actual pieces inside of our sidebar. And then we can just take our like sidebar dot top sidebar, and I could set the display here to flex. Flex direction here is going to be column again, and I want to align the items in this one in the center as well. There we go. That centered our logo, which looks great. Pretty much exactly what we have here as well. So we have now a centered logo. Next step is going to be to make sure we hide this Your Channel and Web Dev Simplified section. So if the sidebar is not open, we're going to say sidebar, and we're going to go into the, let's see, we haven't given these any selectors, so we're just going to say class equals hidden sidebar. There we go. Yeah, we'll do that for now. We'll just say hidden sidebar. We could say hidden or sidebar dot hidden sidebar has a display of none. There we go. So they're going to be hidden by default. But if our sidebar is open, sidebar dot open, our display is going to be initial. So it's just going to have, actually, we'll just change it to a display of block. There we go. So if our sidebar has the open class, which we can just apply to it right now, you can see that content shows up. Without the open class, that content is hidden. So that looks really good. That's kind of what we want. Now that pretty much takes care of the majority of this top sidebar section. The next section is our middle sidebar. If we look at this, really all we have is we have an icon, we have some text, and that's pretty much it. And they're selectable, so it's going to be a link. So we're going to essentially have a unordered list, and inside of here we're going to have a bunch of list items, and each one is going to be an anchor tag, which is going to lead to nothing. And inside this anchor tag, we're going to have an icon, and we're going to have a piece of text. So our icon, we can just copy over from our icons HTML. So we can get our dashboard icon, which is the very first one, into our index HTML here. And I just want to get rid of all this extra crap we don't need. So we don't need any of these classes or any of these styles. So let's get rid of all of those. Just like that, and just like that. There we go. And then the next thing after our SVG is going to be our text, which we'll just put inside of a div for now, which will say dashboard. There we go. Make this a little bit easier to read. Get those on new lines, and indent all of this. There we go. Now if we look at our page, you can see we have our icon and we have that text dashboard. That looks pretty good. Now the next thing I want to do is obviously style this. So we're going to give this a class, which is just, we'll say dashboard, or sidebar, sorry, list. And this will be sidebar list item. There we go. Let's try out how this looks. We'll scroll all the way down here. We'll say sidebar list. We want to give it a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. There we go. Also, what I want to do is I want to have it be a display of flex, I think, and a flex direction of column. And we're going to align the items in the center. That'll hopefully make everything center aligned. And the next thing I want to do is I want to take our icon. So we'll say class equals sidebar icon. And that should be all we need for now. We'll come down here, sidebar icon, and we're going to give it a width of 24 pixels and a height of 24 pixels. There we go. So it's going to have that smaller size, just like it has over here. You can see it's at 24-ish pixel size. Now we have that. Now we need to make our sidebar icon on the same line as our actual text. So to do that, let's see here. We have our A tag here. Let's give this a class of sidebar link. So we can say sidebar link is going to have a display of flex. And we can just actually leave it at that, and they'll put them all on the same line. All we need to do is add a little bit of spacing. So on our sidebar icon, we're just going to say margin right of 1 rem. That gives it a little bit of space. We'll do 0.5 rem for now. And also what we want to do is we want to make it so that our text is invisible. So we'll say class equals sidebar link text. There we go. And what we want to do is say sidebar link text display none when it's inside the sidebar. And then what we need to do is if the sidebar is open, then the display is just going to be block. There we go. So now if we add that open class back to our sidebar, the text will show up. You can see we have all of our text, dashboard, and all this other text. Otherwise, it's going to be hidden. And honestly, we could actually probably just give this the hidden class again, since that's all we're using it for. So let's actually do that. We're saying sidebar hidden, I think is what I called this. Or let's see what I call it. Hidden sidebar. There we go. And that'll allow us to get rid of this styling here. We don't even need that. There we go. That looks pretty good. Obviously, we need to do some spacing. And these things are not quite centered as I would like. And that's because they're different sizes. So let's change these to be 30 pixels as well. So now all of our icons are the same size. They just look a little bit big in my opinion. So maybe we'll change them back to 24 pixels, just like that. And again, we still don't quite have everything centered. So let me inspect to see the reasoning for that. If I just scroll this down a little bit, you can see here, oops, if I just push this to the side, oh, our sidebar icon has that margin on the right. That's our problem. If we get rid of this, now everything's going to be centered right. So for now, let's get rid of that margin. We'll add that back in when we deal with the open class itself. So now let's come up here, or we'll just go down here. We'll say top sidebar. And what we want to do is we want to put a margin on the bottom of this, and we'll just say like 1 rem, or maybe 0.5 rem. That just spaces these two things out from each other. I think 0.5 is pretty good for now. Also, we want to be able to have an active sidebar. You can see this one has the red icon on the left, as well as the color of it is red. So we want to have an active class we can add to one of these sidebar list items. So let's just add the active class to this one and see what we need to all change. So we could say .sidebar list item .active. And the very first thing that I want to change is our fill is going to be our accent color. So we're going to say var accent color. That should change the fill of this icon here, which is perfect. And our normal sidebar list item, which we probably have a selector for here, sidebar list item, doesn't look like we actually have one for it. So I'll just say sidebar list item. This one is going to have a fill, which is our light gray. A light gray. So now if we remove the active class, you can see it has that light gray color, which is the same color as over here. Otherwise, if that class is there, then it's going to be this red color, which looks really good. Also, you'll notice we have a background to this as well, if it is the active one. So we can say that our background is going to have a color here, and this color is our super light gray color. We have a lightest gray, just like that. Let's see what that looks like. You can see that goes around our icon, but we want to, of course, make this essentially expand the full size. So let's inspect to see kind of what we're working with here. We have our sidebar list item, and we have our sidebar list. Our sidebar list, we want to be larger. We want to make it essentially full width. So let's find our sidebar list, if we have a selector for that, width 100%. And what we want to do is see if that changed anything. So let's look in here, find that sidebar list. And of course, it has not increased in size. And that's because our middle sidebar also needs to be full width. We can say, just come up here, middle sidebar width is 100%. And I think an easier way actually to fix this is if we just get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. What we can do is where we selected our sidebar, we gave it a align items of center. We can give it a justify content of stretch. And what that should do is hopefully stretch out all of our content as wide as it can possibly go. So let's look in here, our middle sidebar Still not that wide. And it might be because we have padding on our sidebar. Doesn't look like it. This should just be wider. Let's see if we set a width of 100%. If that changes anything. Okay, that does make it full width, so that's what we want. We're going to put that back on. Coming to our middle sidebar, width 100%. Also for our sidebar list, we want to have a list decoration or list style. None. There we go. That'll get rid of the dots on our list. And then this sidebar list item, we want to also have a width of 100%. Oops, width 100%. There we go. That's exactly what we wanted. So now you can see that that gray background color is covering the entire thing. And if we make it a little bit darker, for now I'll just make it black so it's really easy to see. You can see it's now covering that full width when before it wasn't. All we need to do next is obviously just center our icon. What we can do is we can just say that our list item is going to be a display of flex. We can justify the content in the center. There we go, that centered our icon back into the position that we wanted it. And now what we can do is we can change this color back from black. Let me just back this up a little bit. Copy that color. And then we'll paste it back in. There we go. So now we have that light gray color. It's kind of hard to see though on YouTube. So I'm going to change it to be this light gray instead of lightest gray. So we're just going to make these exactly the same. That's a little bit too dark actually. So we'll just change it to like 200, 200, 200. There we go. That's a little bit easier to see, I think. It was a little bit too hard to see on YouTube because it kind of messes with the colors of things and makes those partially similar colors a little hard to see. So now this is our sidebar item number 1 here. It needs to have a little bit of padding on it because over here you can see it's got quite a bit of padding. So we'll say we'll have like padding and we're going to make it 0 and 0.25 rem. Let's see how that looks. Of course, I swapped around these directions. So we're going to have 0.25 rem on the top and the bottom, and then 0 on the left and right. I think that looks really good as our sidebar. Now what we can do is work on just copying this down and doing it for all the rest of our sidebar items. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it right here. This is not going to be active. We just need to change our icon and our text. So for this one, it's going to say content. There we go. And we're going to copy over that icon from icons.html right here. And we're just going to paste that in as our SVG and remove all this extra stuff that we don't need. So styles, classes, and so on. We're just going to be getting rid of all of those because they're just from YouTube's site and we obviously don't need them. Get rid of that one. And that should be the last one. There we go. Now if we look over here, we of course aren't seeing anything. Let's inspect to see what's going on. Middle sidebar, our list item number 2 here. And our list item looks like our SVG does not have anything inside of it. I must have deleted too much by accident, so we'll just undo this a couple times. Okay, there we go. I think, okay, if we save there, I think what's happening is I just deleted a little bit too much potentially, but we'll go into our styles and we'll see sidebar icon. It should have 24 by 24 pixels. Oh, I know what it is. I deleted the sidebar icon class. Let's add that back into our SVG. Class equals sidebar icon. There we go. There's our icon right there, exactly where we want it. And I think the spacing maybe could be even a little bit larger. So we'll change the padding here to 0.5 rem. That looks a little bit more like it is on YouTube, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to add all these different icons in to this middle sidebar, but I'm not going to make you watch it. I'm just going to fast forward through that so you can not have to sit through all that boringness. Okay, and I just went through and I did all of the icons in this middle section. I also did the bottom icons, and I just copied our sidebar list down completely, so everything is exactly the same for the bottom. The only thing you'll notice if I add like the active class, for example, to this item, you'll notice it doesn't have the full width like it should, and that's because we're only styling our middle sidebar to have all these contents. We also want our bottom sidebar to essentially match our middle sidebar. So we're just going to come in here. We're going to add that. And now our bottom and our middle sidebar work functionally exactly the same, which is pretty much what we want. Next thing I can do is I can get rid of that active class on that bottom sidebar. We can kind of minimize this down. We have everything inside of both of our sidebars done. Next, I want to work on our hover effect because when I hover over these, they get that gray background, which is a little hard to see. So to do that, pretty straightforward for what we need to do. What we want to do is we just want to take this active class and we also want to make it very similar to what our hover is going to be, but the hover doesn't change the color to red. What we can do is we can say sidebar list item hover, and I just want to change our background color to that background color. Now when I hover, you can see they get the background color just like they should, which is what we want. And if we come over here, same exact thing, they're getting that color. Also, something you'll notice is our icons don't appear like they should. So our A tag is not the full width. I'll show you what I'm talking about. When I inspect this and we look at our A tag itself, you can see our A tag does not fill the full width, which means if I click over in this left side section, it doesn't actually redirect me. I need to click in this middle section. So to fix that, let's just make this a 100% width element. So let's see what class we gave it. We gave it a class of sidebar link. So we can just find our sidebar link. Width is 100%. There we go. And what we need to do inside of here is make it so our text is, we'll just do justify content in the center. There we go. And we can actually get rid of display flex from our sidebar list item. So let's get rid of that because we don't need it anymore. There we go. That all works. So essentially all we did is we move our display flex to here to center everything inside of it. And now that looks really good. And the nice thing is our A tag is now 100% width, but of course the height on it is not 100%. It doesn't fill the full height. So to get around that issue, what we need to do is we need to take our padding here, and this needs to be added to our actual link itself instead of the sidebar list item. So we're just going to move that to our sidebar link. And now you can see no matter where I'm in that gray area, it's redirecting me to that link, which means that these are going to work anywhere I click in the gray area, which is exactly what we want. So now the next thing that I want to work on is just that red strip that shows up on the left. As you can see, there's this nice thick red line that shows up on the right side. So we can select our sidebar, dot sidebar list item. We want to get the active one. I'm going to get the before element. What I want to do is I want to take the content. I want to set it to an empty string. Background color is going to be that same accent color. Our height is going to be 100%. Just like that. Our left position is going to be 0. We're going to position this absolutely, which means I need to make our sidebar list item a position of relative. Just like that. And we just need to set a width. We'll just say like 5 pixels. See how that looks. Now if we come over here, we should see, okay, yep, we have that sidebar on the right hand or on the left hand side. It's a little bit thick, maybe 3 pixels would be better. There we go. So now whichever one's active is going to have that left line on the side, which is red, and that looks really good. Now, if we come over here, it looks like most of the content for our minimized sidebar is exactly like we want it. The next step is going to be making it so that our full size sidebar is like we want it. And then of course, making the animation work, which is going to be, I think, pretty tricky because there's a lot of interesting things going on in that animation. Let's take a look at how we would make the full sidebar work. We just go all the way up to our sidebar where we have like our sidebar open class. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to bring it all the way down to the bottom so we can kind of work with this all in one place. So when our sidebar is open, we want to give it a set width, like 200 pixels, for example. And if we give our sidebar that open class, you can see that we now have our sidebar and it's pretty similar size to the one over here on YouTube. I would say 200 pixels is a pretty good number. I think that's what we're going to keep it at. And you'll notice we have all of our content inside of here. Obviously, we need to make a lot of changes though, because it does not look correct, but a lot of things already are correct. First of all, we want to get rid of the text coloring that we have here on our A tag. So we want to go to our A tag, which is our sidebar link. Let's find that. There we go. We want to change our color here, and our color is going to be that same exact color, which is light gray. There we go. And we also want to change our text decoration to none. There we go. And I want to make sure I align our items at center as well. That way the text lines up in the center of our icon. And if we look over here, you can see something kind of interesting is there's a large gap between our text and our icon. So we want to have a large margin on our text on the left-hand side, or we could just do it on the icon itself. It doesn't really matter which one we do it on. So let's just do it on the sidebar icon. Yeah, that's fine. We'll do the sidebar icon. We're going to say that if the sidebar is open, then we're going to take our sidebar icon and we're going to add margin on the right, which is going to be 1.5 rem. That look about right? Let's see. I'd say that looks pretty close. We'll maybe make it 1 rem. Another thing important to note is everything is going to be left aligned at that point. So we're going to take our sidebar, which is I think just going to be, let's see. I think it's going to be our top and our bottom, our middle and bottom sidebar here. So if our sidebar is open, then we're going to take, our middle sidebar. And if our sidebar is open, we're going to take our bottom sidebar and we're going to change here our justify content to be flex start. Okay, looks like I didn't put the flex on the middle sidebar. Where did I put it at? Oh, I put it on our sidebar list. We change this to sidebar list. There we go. don't need this one here. That should have worked. Oh, we need to make this align items. There we go. And we want to make sure this shows up below our sidebar list style here. And that, of course, did not quite work. Let's see what's going on here. If we look, we have our sidebar list. Our list items are the ones that we need to change. So we'll say sidebar list item has a flex start. And this should be justify content flex start. Of course, that didn't do it either. Let's just inspect to see what's going on here. So we have our sidebar list item. Sidebar link is being centered inside of it. So our sidebar list item, let's take a look. It has justify content flex start. Does it need to be align items? No. I think justify content is right because it's a display of flex. That's what I thought. Let's just look at our code here. So we have our sidebar list item, and then we have our sidebar link. Our sidebar link is the one that's centering everything. If I get rid of this, now everything's offline. Okay. So when our sidebar is open, we're going to get our sidebar link, and we're going to position everything at the flex start, just like that. Now we just need to put some essentially padding on the left-hand side. So we'll say padding left is going to be 0.5 REM. There we go. That positions them actually really well. Very similar to how YouTube has theirs. Theirs has a little bit more. We'll do 1 REM. There we go. And I think that looks really good. We're just going to make it so that the margin on the right of our sidebar is 1.5 REM, a little bit more space, kind of like YouTube does. And that looks pretty much spot on, in my opinion. I think so. And if we zoom in our page, you can see that this section has scrolling, which is exactly what we want. But we don't want this bottom section to have scrolling. So we can fix that by just saying here that we're going to select specifically our middle sidebar, and we're going to move the scroll related information up into here. There we go. And actually, we don't want the bottom one to flex grow either. So we can move the flex grow up into here. We just want them to have a width of 100%. That's really all we care about. So there we go. That looks like it works. So now we can scroll this section, which is really good. And these icons are starting to look pretty much exactly like they do on the YouTube website, which is what I want. As you can see, they look pretty much exactly the same. If I zoom out, you can see with no scroll bar, it works fine. And with a scroll bar, it's going to work just fine. Now back over into here, we can work on styling this top section because this icon up here needs to grow a lot. So let's find where we put that icon. Here we go. Menu icon. Nope, not that one. A little bit below. What did we call this? We called it the channel logo. Let's search for that. Channel logo. There we go. So we can find our sidebar when it is open, and we can get our channel logo. And now we need to change around our width and our height. That's the only thing we need to change. Our width, let's make it 100 pixels and 100 pixels. Is that about the right size? Yeah, I'd say that's pretty spot on. Maybe it's like 90 and 90. That might be a little bit more accurate to how it is on YouTube. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty close. Now the next thing is this your channel section. Whoops, did not mean to click that. There's your channel section, which is going to be a black color. And then we're going to have the text below that, which is this lighter gray. So did we give these classes? We did not. So we'll say, we'll just call this the your channel and then channel name. You can give them better class names if you want when you're working on this. It's entirely up to you. So your channel, we're going to have a color, which is that dark text. And then we're going to have the channel name, which has a color, which is the lighter text. I think it's just like the medium gray text. Let's see how that looks. So there's the text, what it should look like. And if we come over here, it's pretty spot on, I'd say. It's pretty much exactly the same as what we want it to be. We just need to change around the text sizes because this is pretty large text. We need to make it quite a bit smaller. We'll say like font size is 0.75 REM. Do that on both of them. And this one I think has a font weight of bold. Let's see. Yeah, it appears to have like a bolder font than the other one. And it looks like the font size are about the same. We just want to add a little bit of margin, bottom of like 0.15 REM. Add a little bit of space. I think we have space below our icon as well. Yeah, our icon has a lot of space below it. So this should have margin on the top of like 0.5 REM. Let's see how that looks. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Obviously our font is different than the YouTube font, but that's perfectly okay. You can change your font if you want to. Other than that though, I think it looks really good. We just want to add a little bit of more margin maybe on the bottom of our top sidebar. So let's find our top sidebar. Looks like we have no margin at all on it. Let me just inspect to see if that's the case. We have our top sidebar. It looks like we have a little bit of margin. We have margin bottom of 0.5 rem. Looks like I selected our sidebar twice. There it is right there. So we're just going to take this, get that out of there. There we go. Move it up into our other sidebar selector. And we're going to change this to 1 rem. There we go. That looks a little bit more like the one that they have over here. And when we have it small, so if we get rid of that small class, or the open class, that looks pretty good. I'd say that's pretty spot on. So now we can toggle this open close class when we click on the button. So what I want to do is in here, I want to just have our data sidebar. Select that in our script. We'll say sidebar. Get rid of this search here. Is going to be data sidebar. And in here we can just say sidebar.classlist.toggle the open class. Make sure I spell sidebar correctly. So now when I click on this, it should hopefully toggle that class, of course, after we add in our JavaScript. So a script with a source of script.js, and we're going to defer this. So now when I click that, you can see it's toggling between open and closed, which is exactly what we want. That looks really good. Also, I want to add some spacing between our bottom sidebar and our middle sidebar here. So in our styles, let's just go ahead and we're going to do this on our middle sidebar. We're going to say margin is going to be 1 rem and 0. And then what we're going to do all the way at the top here is where we had our top sidebar. I'm just going to remove the margin we added to it because we put that inside of our middle. So now there's space between our middle sidebar and our bottom sidebar, which looks really good in my opinion. I quite like how this looks. Now the next step, if we look over here, is going to be for the animation, because it looks like we have everything else complete. All we have left to do is the animation. We need to add a transition on the width of our sidebar. So we can find our sidebar from all the way up to where we have our sidebar. It's way at the top somewhere. Here we go. We want to add a transition. This transition is for the width, and we're going to give it a duration. So we'll say like animation duration. And we'll say animation timing curve. There we go. And that's because we want to make sure that these variables are exactly the same. So we'll say animation duration is 200 milliseconds and animation timing curve is going to be ease in out. Now, hopefully, when we click on this, you can see that our width is growing and shrinking as we go, which is exactly what we want. Obviously, everything else is kind of changing all at once, which is not what we want, but so far this is looking really good. Now, the next step is going to be for changing how our text works, I think, because our text right now instantly disappears, but the way that it works on YouTube is it actually has an opacity that fades out. So if you watch this text here, you'll see it kind of fades out as the sidebar shrinks. So what we want to do is we want to take our text and we want to change it so that it fades out instead of just instantly disappearing. Let's see if we have a class on this. We call it hidden sidebar. We can just make everything with this hidden sidebar class fade out. So let's just search for hidden sidebar. There we go. So instead of display none, we're going to change the opacity to 0, just like that. And we're going to change the width here maybe to, no, let's not mess with the width yet. And here we're going to give it an opacity of 1. There we go. So now when I toggle that, it's not quite doing what I want. So let me think for a second here. Of course, we need to animate it, obviously. So let's do transition. We want to transition the opacity over our animation duration and our animation timing curve. Let's see if that makes a difference. It does make it fade out, which is good. Now the next step that we need to do is make it so that it essentially disappears as well. So let's change the width here to 0. And here we're going to give it a width of 100%. There we go. That looks like it now fades down kind of like we want it to. The problem is it's now centering everything right away. While over here you can see that everything stays left aligned. It actually is never centered. It's always left aligned. It just matters how big our sidebar is. So we need to get rid of our center alignment for our sections. So our sidebar list should never center align. Let's see, does that fix it? No, it's not on our sidebar list. Sorry, it is on our sidebar link. Our sidebar link should never be center aligned. And then we want to make sure, let's see here. In this scenario, we want to make sure our padding is always there. Yeah, we should always have our padding on the left. Let's see, if we change this to 1.5 rem, does that make a difference? No. We need to have padding left of like 1 rem. 1.2 rem? 1.25 rem. That looks pretty centered, I would say, right there. That looks good enough for my use case, like 1.3. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty centered. You could make it more centered by making sure you hard code all the widths of everything, which we've kind of done. So let's see, what's the size of our sidebar? Our sidebar is, our menu icon, that's not the right icon. Our sidebar is 75 pixels wide. And we know that our icons themselves, I believe, are 24 pixels. We'll change them to 25, and that way we know for a fact we need 25 pixels on the left, and it'll be exactly centered. There we go. So now it is exactly in the dead center, minus our scroll bar. If our scroll bar is not there, now it's dead centered. So now we have it perfectly centered, which is how YouTube's works. The scroll bar gets in the way of the centering. So it works exactly like the one on YouTube does. And now the nice thing is, as we expand and we shrink this, you can see it's mostly looking correct, but for some reason our sidebars are kind of like disappearing. Like the icon is appearing and disappearing really quickly. So I need to see what the issue with that is. It looks like our sidebar icon changes size. Let's take a look. So here we have a size. Yeah, it's a much smaller size here. As you can see, it's only 18 pixels wide. So the reason for that, I believe, is because it has a flex shrink on it. We need to get rid of that flex shrink on our sidebar icon. So let's say flex shrink of 0. Now it shouldn't be able to shrink in size. There we go. Now it's perfectly doing exactly what we want it to. Getting all of that size changes. It's kind of bumping up for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why that is. As you can see, like if you look right at this red line, it's kind of bumping up and down in position. It must be something to do with the height of these containers. Let's view the height of this container. So we have our sidebar list is about 41 pixels tall. And when I shrink it down, it is still 41 pixels tall. They're all that 41 pixels, okay? And when I'm expanded, 41, 41, 41. So they're all still 41 pixels tall. So that shouldn't be the issue. So our sidebar list is 410 pixels tall, 422. So it got taller when I shrunk it down. So we must be adding some margin or something onto it somewhere. Let's see. If we expand it, our sidebar in the middle, our sidebar, yeah, our middle section here has a size of 245 and expanded 238. So there's something that's changing between open and closed. I'm not 100% sure what it is. So our list is changing size from 410 to 422. So we can kind of go a step further. And you would think it would be one of these items inside of here, but they all seem to be the exact same height. So it would have to be on the sidebar list itself. Something would be changing, but it does not appear like anything changes on it. Oh, you know what it probably is? It's probably because it has the ability to grow, to fill all the remaining space. Yeah, that would be it. Okay. So it's got flex grow, so it's growing to be a little bit bigger because there's not as much stuff up here that's taking up space. So one other issue we need to do is we need to take our hidden content, because right now our hidden content, we can kind of select it if I find it, has a 0 width, but there's hidden content in here. We need to make it so that the height is also 0. And here we're just going to say like height auto. That'll like instantly disappear, which is not quite what we want. We want to make it a little bit more of a grow and shrink kind of thing. So let me try to think about the best way to do that. I think the best way to do that would be to take our top container and actually grow it and shrink it. So we can get rid of this height section. We don't care about that anymore. Also, we want to make sure that the margin doesn't go away, because right now our margin is disappearing on the right-hand side of our sidebar icon. We want to put it on our text itself. So did we give those a class? I don't think we did. We just gave it a hidden sidebar class. So we're just going to select the hidden sidebar inside of our sidebar list. We'll say sidebar list, hidden sidebar. And what I want to do is I want to put the margin on the left side. It doesn't even have to be when it's open. There we go. That looks good. Because now it doesn't get rid of that margin. So that, I think, looks pretty much perfect. I want to make sure that we have our word break also. So we'll say like word wrap none. Let's see, what is it? Or word break, maybe? No. Oh, maybe it's like white space. Yeah, no wrap. There we go. That way, when we shrink, if you look down at the send feedback, before it was wrapping to the next line, but now it doesn't do that, which is pretty much exactly what I want. That looks good. And the next step is just to shrink this top sidebar section. So pretty easy to do, I think. We'll just go all the way down to the bottom. We'll say top sidebar. We need to give it a defined height, so like an actual specific height. So let's just see how big it is right now, and we'll just give it essentially that height. Top sidebar. It has a height of 127 pixels. So we'll just say 125. 125 pixels. There we go. So that is now the height of our top sidebar. And then when our sidebar dot open, we want to get our top sidebar, and that is going to be this 125 pixels. And when our sidebar is closed, we need to give it a new height. So that new height is going to be, we just inspect this real quick. What I want to do in our top sidebar is get rid of the hidden sidebar sections. I'm going to set the height to 0. This one have a height of 0. There we go. That actually didn't look like it got rid of it. Let's just delete them completely. So now our top sidebar should have about a height of 30-ish pixels. We'll say height is 30 pixels. When it's open, it's 125, and when it's not open, it's going to be 30. There we go. So it's that much smaller size, and then when we open it, it's going to grow to that larger size. There we go. Now what we can do is we can just kind of refresh this so our text shows back up. There we go. We now have our text coming in, which looks good. We want to make it so it animates this, so we can say transition on the height is going to be using that animation duration and the animation timing curve. Let's see if that looks good. Yep, there we go. That's kind of shrinking and growing. Now we just need to take this icon here and make it so that it actually grows with the size of our container. So I think I called it channel logo. There it is right here. Instead of giving it a hard-coded width and height, I'm just going to say the width is 100%. And we're going to say that the aspect ratio is 1:1, because it should always be a square. There we go. And we also probably want to give it a... Actually, we should probably put the height as 100%. There we go. That's still too big, though. I guess what we could do is we could keep it how we have it, and we could just do an animation. So we could say transition, and this one's going to be on the width and the height. So we'll just do it for all, and we'll say our animation duration and animation timing curve. That should hopefully change it. There we go. It's now shrinking and growing. We just want to make this text here actually be correct. So let me think. This text needs to be centered, first of all. So let's find where that is. That's in our top sidebar. We've selected somewhere up the top, I believe. There we go, our top sidebar. Aligning the items in the center. We just inspect this to see what's going on. So we have our top sidebar, and then we have this content and this content. They should both be aligned. Oh, it's because our width is 100%. So we want to take our top sidebar. Just scroll down to the bottom for this. And we want to get the hidden content inside of it. So we'll say hidden sidebar, and we're just going to say text align center. There we go. That fixed that. Now let's see how this looks. You can see we have an issue where our text is like essentially shrinking down to that width that we don't want it to happen. We want the width to always be full size for this because it's just going to shrink and disappear. So we'll say that the top sidebar hidden content when the sidebar is closed. Yeah, so we can just put it up here. We can just say width is 100%. And it's going to be when it's in the sidebar. Let's see if this works. There we go. Now the actual content doesn't shrink its width. It just stays the same width, and then it's going to just kind of shrink down and disappear, just like it does over on the YouTube one. You can see that it just kind of disappears. It's really staying in place. Ours is a little bit different in that it moves up with it, but overall it gives you the exact same kind of appearance. And this content on the side is just moving in and out of place. And overall, I think that's pretty much everything. Let me just double check here. Look at this one versus this one. I do notice one thing with our icons. They're kind of moving weird. You can see here that they're a little bit closer. Is that how they are on YouTube's? No, they don't move any closer on YouTube's. So right now we have them pushed out farther when it's closed, and here we have them pushed closer. So what we need to do is we just need to change it so that they're not pushed so far. I think the easiest way to do that would be to just change our, we find here where we set our padding on the left to 25 pixels, okay. And then we need to find it when our sidebar is open, the padding on the left is 1 rem. So let's get rid of that. There we go. Now they have the exact same position, which is what we want. There we go. I think that looks really good. And now we can change our light color here to be even lighter. If we want, we could do like 244. I think that's what it used to be. Now you can see it's a much lighter color, and that looks really good. And all the rest of our content is good. Oh, we do need to make our sidebar obviously show up on the left side of our screen and stay there. So let's find our sidebar. We're going to say position is sticky. And we're going to say left is 0 and top is 0. Let's see if that worked. Of course, it's going up a little bit. We need the top to be our nav height. What do we call this? It was like header height. There we go. There we go. Now it's always going to stay on the left side of our page, and it's always going to stay fixed on the top section so it doesn't actually move. And that is exactly what we want. Of course, it looks like we have an issue though. No, we don't have an issue. Our bottom section's right there. If I zoom out, bottom section stays at the bottom. Everything works like we want. And this sidebar works exactly the same as the YouTube dashboard. And that's all it takes to create this YouTube sidebar. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other live solves. They're going to be linked over here. And with that said, thank you very much for watching and have a good day.